Welcome to DriveTime Exchange. As rubber hits the road, hard talk meets great music. Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. on NETT Radio, taking you above and beyond.
Just wanna say a word to the youths and them. We see today we have so much problem. You're young and you have your whole life ahead of you. Don't go and mess it up, then regret you do. Between tomorrow's dreams and yesterday's regret lies today's opportunity. Oh yeah. Don't mind how hard it seems. Try to get up and make an extra effort today. I say, oh youths of the nation, listen well. Youths of the nation, listen well. Oh youths of the nation, listen well now. Oh youths of the nation, listen well.
Well, everybody, good afternoon to you, and of course, welcome to another edition of the DriveTime Exchange. And of course, you are listening to New Era TT Radio, the heartbeat of the Caribbean. This is where we take you above and beyond. Happy am I to be here with you, and of course, inside of this DriveTime Exchange, we are led by none other than journalist extraordinaire himself, Mr. Tony Fraser. So, Tony, good afternoon to you.
And afternoon to you too, Charlo. How are things with you?
I'm all right. Coming off of the weekend, it was one of those kind of long weekends, but yeah, quite a bit to be done, and you're engrossed in stuff how it is. But other than that, I am good.
Wonderful, and it's always good to be on this side of life than on the other side. Fellas who have gone over on that side, well, we can't hear from them, so we don't know what's happening over there, right?
We have no idea, so we really have to make the best of this one.
Oh yes, where we are here now. All right, so Charlo, we want to start this afternoon with the big news over the last couple of weeks has to do with the American contingent of warships within the region in the Caribbean Sea and in the area. And, there are all kinds of talks about that zone of peace and so on and so on. But we're not going there in that kind of sense this afternoon. What we want to do is to talk about... sorry, let me say something of the details first. First of all, that an American, a flotilla of warships blew really some kind of a pirogue, an extension of a pirogue, a sophisticated version of a pirogue out of the water, and reportedly killed 11 persons on the vessel. According to the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State, these were persons who were transporting drugs through the region and ultimately to the United States. There was even talk about the drugs passing through Trinidad and Tobago. And the response has been that from the Prime Minister, who has not hidden her support for the effort of the United States because she believes that people over a long period of time have been suckered into drug taking and have died and so on. And her statement was clear that she's very much part of it. Now, there's another element of it which has arisen, is that we have not heard any details of, the incident. There is something of a video, a few seconds long, which looks at the ship and the explosion and so on. And there are questions about the ship. Some people have called for AI, etc. We don't know those things, but those are matters which have arisen around the incident. So what we want to do this afternoon, and I am very happy that my good friend Stephen Kanghal, he raised a number of very technical points, complete with map and all of that. And what we want to get from Stephen is a retired Foreign Service officer in Trinidad and Tobago, very experienced. He has obviously served in different parts of the world, the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago as a Foreign Service officer. And he issued a statement looking at the details of this matter. And so I'm glad that Stephen has accepted the invitation to share the information, Stephen, on the whole business of blowing ships out of the water, the law of the sea, how it is involved in that. And we know that there was a very famous Trinidadian who was deeply involved in the whole establishment of the law and the law of the sea protocol, etc., etc. So Stephen will tell us all about that. Thanks for accepting the invitation, Stephen. And take it from here. Tell our listeners and our viewers the process of doing something like this, and if in fact what the Americans adopted, whatever their rationale, syncs with the reality of international law on these matters. Stephen Kanghal. I think Stephen, your button is not on.
Yeah, Stephen, if you hear.
Former foreign officer of Trinidad and Tobago, who dealt with in very detailed manner with these kinds of things when he was in the service. So, Stephen, give us a sense of what the international practice and the law require in such a matter.
Yes, well, as you rightfully said, Tony, the late Lennox Bala was in the very forefront of leading our way in trying to write a new charter for the oceans that began in 1967 and culminated in 1982 with the Law of the Sea Convention. So as a small island developing state, I think we took a leadership role in the Caribbean in trying to promote the interests of developing countries in terms of extending their national jurisdiction to 200 miles, and in some cases right now to 350 nautical miles from our coast, which will mark the edge of our continental shelf. So we have a very proud record of being a lot of expertise in the law of the sea. And today, in this present episode, which has sort of happened, in the first instance, Tony, to say that the vessels are anchored in international waters is not correct, because of the fact that the entire Caribbean Sea have been divided into what they call exclusive economic zones. And there are no pockets of high seas in the Caribbean. There are no pockets of high seas in the Caribbean, or there are no pockets of international waters. What we have is the Caribbean divided up entirely by the coastal states into what you call exclusive economic zones. Not all states had 200 miles, so that if you have 400 miles, say, between Puerto Rico and Venezuela, the midpoint is actually the boundary, so there are no high seas. So I found it not correct to say that the Armada or the flotilla was anchored in international waters. That was not correct, because in the EEZ, Tony, ships of all nations have the right for freedom of navigation, but that does not make the EEZ or the exclusive economic zone part of the high seas. There is what you call freedom of navigation. Once that freedom of navigation does not interfere with what you call the sovereign rights of the coastal state to explore and exploit the resources of both the seabed and the superadjacent water column or the seas. Once they do not interfere with that. So in the first instance, I would say that the presence of an American armada that is anchored in parts of the Caribbean Sea is not exercising the right of freedom of navigation, because it is anchored, it is there. And freedom of navigation implies movement from one part of the ocean to another part.
Yeah.
The other point also is that...
Sivan, before you go on, I think that what you've just said is so important to understand for our listeners, our viewers to understand. So let me ask you to expand a little bit more. What I understand you to be saying is that because of the adjacency, because of the closeness of the islands, we cannot get the 200 miles limit, which is part of the international law, and therefore there are no free spaces in the Caribbean Sea in this region. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying, there are no pockets of what you call high seas, seas, or there are no pockets of international waters. Right. What we have is entirely in the Caribbean Sea, national waters. Right. Waters that fall under the national jurisdiction of the coastal states concerned.
Mm-hmm. And so international vessels cannot come and park up in what they may consider international waters. They're all waters which belong to, as you said, the coastal states of the region.
The coastal states, because remember, in the EEZ, which is the 200-mile zone, the coastal state, as I said, has economic jurisdiction over the resources of the seabed, subsoil, and the water column or the seas. And if you, for instance, especially military hardware, were to park up there, it means that you are interfering with the rights of the coastal state to be able to exercise its sovereign rights. Now, if you were actually in transit and moving and navigating through those waters and not posing a threat to the coastal state, then that is a freedom of navigation. But once you're anchored, you're not navigating, and I believe you're interfering with the rights of the coastal state.
Stephen, let me ask you something that I'm sure that you are absolutely aware of. Years ago, I think Ramesh Maharaj was the Attorney General when the so-called ship rider agreement was signed with the United States to allow U.S. Vessels to come into the region. Again, there was talk about drug running and so on. Does that agreement in any way allow the Americans the right to park up, as it were, in the Caribbean Sea to carry out whatever action they deem fit so to do?
Yeah, I looked at the concept of those ship rider, but I don't think the ship rider agreement has anything to do with the present situation. Ship rider agreement means that in terms of, especially in terms of drug trafficking and so on, ship rider means that a U.S. vessel can come within our waters, and agents from our country, right, can board these ships, and the U.S. ships can then facilitate whatever drug interdiction is being actually undertaken. But that is on the basis of agreement.
Right. Okay, so I just wanted you to clear that up.
Your ships are not in our waters.
Right. Okay, so go ahead. I just wanted you to clear that
Yeah.
off the
So
table.
right. So having established that, and I'm quite amazed, law of the sea is not something that is taught in law school. And I find, for instance, lawyers who are not versed in the law of the sea describing the location of these ships in what they call international waters, which is patently false. You know, even for instance, I heard Minister Sturge. I think that concept was planted by the American firstly. Now, if I think I posted a map of showing where the Armada,
Yeah.
where various
Mhm.
ships are located. Now,
Uh-huh.
some are located in what I call U.S. waters. That is the waters south of Puerto Rico, right? But beyond the middle line, there are other ships which are in the EEZ of Venezuela, because Venezuela has 1/5 of the Caribbean Sea as its EEZ. 1/5. Imagine Venezuela has a bilateral boundary with Puerto Rico, i.e., United States, so that there are no areas of international waters or high seas located in the Caribbean. It's all areas of national jurisdiction in which the coastal states has a sovereign right to undertake economic jurisdiction with regard to the exploration and exploitation of seabed resources and what resources of the water of the water column or the sea. So let us get out of the thing that out of our discussion that there are no areas of international waters in the Caribbean Sea, and that these ships, these military vessels, are in the in the national jurisdiction of the various states concerned. Now, if, for instance, let us come to that question of the blowing up of that I call a pirogue. That was not a ship. That was a pirogue, more like a fishing vessel when you look at the size of it with the outboard engine and so on. And from what I have seen, I think that ship may have been in the territorial war, the 12-mile. Remember, Venezuela has a 12-mile territorial sea extending from its Caribbean coast, right? Or from Margarita, really, from Margarita. And then it has another 12-mile, which is a contiguous zone. In that for 24 miles, military ships have no right there because that is not exercising the right of what they call innocent passage. In other words, the presence of those ships in that 24 miles off the northern coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea is infringing what I call the right of innocent passage because it poses a threat to the safety of the coastal states,
Right.
right? So,
Stephen, can you just elucidate for our listeners this right of innocent passage? What exactly is it?
yeah, the right. Trinidad and Tobago exercise what is called sovereignty. It exercises sovereignty over its land space of the airspace above that land space, and it exercises sovereignty in the territorial sea. That is a 12-mile territorial sea that is measured from our archipelagic baselines, not from the coast, from the archipelagic baseline. But the ships of all nations have a right of innocent passage. They can navigate through our territorial sea, but they cannot pose a threat or a risk to the safety of the coastal state, because then that does not fit the criteria for exercising innocent passage. Warships hardly enjoy the right of innocent passage, and if they want to come within our territorial sea, they have to seek prior approval. They have to seek prior approval to be able to navigate within our within our territoriality of 12 miles, because warships by definition is a threat, a potential threat to the security and safety of the coastal state of Trinidad and Tobago. That is innocent passage. That is the only exception to the sovereignty that Trinidad and Tobago will exercise in its 12-mile territorial sea.
So innocent passage would be like say a cruise ship passing through the area, taking up passengers, dropping off passengers, and going about its business in a completely innocent kind of way, and not getting involved in any kinds of war activities. Yes.
Yes, that would be correct. That a cruise ship, of course, does not pose a danger or threat to the coastal state. Right. So but recall some time ago when I think France was exporting certain radioactive materials, and these ships were going to pass through the Caribbean. Caribbean countries actually were opposed to the passage of these French vessels carrying, I think, explosive devices through their waters, even the EEZ, because of the fact that poses a risk to the preservation of the marine environment. The coastal state, like Trinidad and Tobago, has the exclusive right to be able to protect the integrity of its marine environment. And any activity undertaken by foreign entities within that within the EEZ that compromises or endangers the integrity of the marine environment can be a basis on which the coastal state can forbid and prevent the exercise of what they call freedom of navigation, because that is an activity that poses a danger to the coastal state. In some instances, some states, like the Caribbean, stood up against the passage of these ships carrying hazardous substances through its waters many years ago. That would have been about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and there was some attempt to dump some of that waste in the area. And I remember the New Zealand-based ship, it's Peace something, and I don't remember the exact name of it, got involved in that kind of exercise. So again, too, another concept has come into focus, which incorporates all that you've talked about. The Caribbean Sea as a zone of peace, and not an area to be engaged in all kinds of activities, including dumping of toxic waste into the waters of the Caribbean Sea. Yes?
Yeah, but in addition to that, not only, like, you have the UN establishing rules and so on with respect to the oceans, right? But you also have the International Maritime Organization, an organization at which I worked there since 1981 to 1978, and they have established a regime to protect and to conserve extra sensitive marine areas. So the Caribbean Sea is now under certain conventions of the IMO that is intended to prevent or to abate what they call ship-generated sources of pollution.
Yeah.
So you have the UN is having rules and regulation about the preservation of the marine environment, and then you also have the IMO specific to ship-generated sources of pollution.
So, Stephen, here is another matter that I want you to comment on. Can a nation, a country in the Caribbean, or several countries in the Caribbean say to America, we have waived our right to exercise sovereignty in this area, and therefore you can bring warships into the area and do as you please to deal with what you term drug dealers.
No, well, I think, the Caribbean or CARICOM, as there's the Caribbean, which is the geographical concept, and then there's CARICOM, which is the common market. Right. So, let's suppose we talk, can certain countries do that? I think that is a matter to be treated at a bilateral level, because I don't think Trinidad and Tobago has actually given up its sovereignty to any centralized agency that could actually communicate, like the CARICOM Secretariat cannot relay that particular request to United. It has to be done bilaterally.
Okay.
Right? It has to be done bilaterally, because we all are individual contracting parties to the Law of the Sea Convention, as well as to IMO conventions, international ship-related conventions. We don't have a common position, or we don't act collectively on that. We act individually.
Right. So if there were to be some kind of permission in that regard, CARICOM states would have to come together and make a multilateral decision to allow the Americans or anyone else to get into the region and engage in warlike activity. Yes?
Well, on this issue that we are talking about, Tony, that is the American blockade of Venezuela. We do not have a unanimous, we do not have a collective decision on that. You have the ALBA states who have actually opposed to that blockade, because they are in the Venezuelan camp because of the oil facility. So that the Prime Minister, of course, was aware that there is no unanimity in the CARICOM to be able to make a CARICOM position on that, because, as I said, about 6 states that are members of CARICOM are recipient and beneficiaries of the ALBA arrangement, so that they have already condemned with Venezuela the presence of this blockade in the Caribbean.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clear all those things off the table, as it were.
Yeah.
We are talking with Stephen Kanghal, a retired foreign officer of Trinidad and Tobago, deeply experienced in foreign matters. He spent his whole career in the foreign service, and he has brought some matters to the table for discussion, which we have not heard elsewhere. Let me ask you, Stephen, Marco Rubio, the U.S. Foreign Secretary, has talked about, when asked about the same legality and the authority to do what the Americans are supposed to have done, and there are questions as to whether this vessel, really was in the waters and so on. But that's another kind of question. His response to the legality or illegality of it was to say to the effect, look, thousands of our people over many years, decades, have been dying and making, from the drug trade and from guns and so on. And therefore, that has given the American government the right to do what it has done by putting the ships into the waters and blowing a vessel out of the water.
Well, you see, in domestic law, we have a system of punishment, in domestic. In international law, we don't have a policeman. We don't have a police force to implement the law, except the Security Council. If there are violations of international law, and the matter is then referred to this, for instance, when some time ago, when Venezuela attempted to take over the Essequibo, that matter was adjudicated by the International Court of Justice in an interim measure, and the failure of Venezuela desist from undertaking these acts of sovereignty in Essequibo, that matter will refer to the Security Council. And there's only the Security Council that can actually act as an implementer of the judgment of the International Court of Justice. And there's only the Security Council that can sanction the use of force in international relations to settle international disputes. So that I don't think we have the equivalent of a TTPS in the international setting. You have judicial organs like the International Criminal Court, like the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, like the International Court of Justice that can adjudicate in this matter. And while we're on that subject, Tony, this particular situation is really now the situation in which Trinidad has actually adopted what I refer to as a radical, and I'll perhaps later on try to qualify what I mean by radical policy. That matter is now before the International Court of Justice, and submissions have been made by both parties, and we expect by next year that the International Court of Justice will issue a judgment. And based on the proceedings that I have been following and the submissions and so on, I have no doubt that the International Court of Justice will preserve the status quo, i.e., that the International Court of Justice will recognize and legitimize the sovereignty of Guyana over the Essequibo, and that Essequibo is part and parcel of the territorial jurisdiction and political independence of Guyana. I have no doubt about that.
Okay.
So that
that's
could actually the tension could actually ease up next year if the court would actually give a judgment, a final judgment, and legitimize Guyana's right of the Essequibo as part of its territory, 83,000 square miles of territory, as well as the adjacent maritime areas that flow from their occupation and sovereignty that they exercise over the Essequibo region, which, as you know, Tony, is 2/3 of Guyana's territory. Two-thirds of and most of the Starbuck field. Producing a million barrels.
Some of the most valuable territory. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna, in time discuss that matter at length, but we're focusing now on this whole business. So, what do you conclude from all of the legal boundaries that you've talked about established and as part of the whole law and so on? And one country cannot jump in and make a determination based on its own set of circumstances to break the law, as it were.
Yes, well, what we are talking is right, and what is happening in the Caribbean Sea is might. Now, the prevalence of might over right was a legacy of our past, of our past.
Colonial past.
And today is because with the advent of United Nations, we found there was a reduction in the use of force. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, since 1962, right, as a small island state, adopted what I call a UN approach to international relations that is based on the sovereign equality of all states. But as a small island, unarmed state, we have to use diplomacy, we have to use judicial measures in order to be able to settle disputes with our neighbors and so on. So that, sometimes I get the impression that the US go out there in their escapades and then depend upon the lawyers to find the legal justification from what they did. You know, so I think what is happening really is I'm talking law. I am not taking sides on anybody, but we must be aware of the law. For instance, we must be aware of the law before we say international waters. We must be aware of the law. And if there are no international waters in the Caribbean Sea where the Armada is anchored, then why do we say they're international and there's no justification for the presence of that whole flotilla of military vessels in the Caribbean Sea, which is targeting? Now, the other thing which I think is need to be said in this particular scenario that is unfolding extensively.
Stephen, just hold on. Stephen, just hold on for 1 second. Let me talk with Charles for a moment, and we're going to come back to you in a few seconds. Charlo, we are supposed to get another guest on our program. Is he locked in just yet?
Yes, Tony. Yes, he's here.
Bert Wilkinson is there.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So yes, Stephen, we are going to talk about Guyana's elections, and we have a Caribbean journalist, Bert Wilkinson from Guyana, to talk about that matter, which is a political matter, which I don't want to involve you in. But what you've brought to us is some wonderful insight and explanation into international law, and I surely want to have you back again to go further. But let me ask you the final question. In those circumstances that you have described, what should be the role of Trinidad and Tobago looking on from the sidelines and making a comment on it?
I think Trinidad and Tobago should tread more carefully. Now, you recall some time ago in June, there was an altercation in the Gulf of Paria when it was said that certain nationals were actually attempting to destabilize, and very harsh language was used, that saying that I will order the Coast Guard, if there's any unidentifiable vessel, that you will fire upon them or use force, So we have to be careful about that in terms of that. Secondly, I believe that the Prime Minister is such a busy person. I'm looking to see the Minister of Foreign Affairs is responsible for the day-to-day activities in the area of foreign policy. And I find that the focus is too much on the Prime Minister, when Minister Sobers ought to be actually doing some of the running on this and relieving the Prime Minister to carry on other activities, and only when it's absolutely necessary to be able to make instant foreign policy. And I'm saying that pro-Guyana policy is what I call is instantaneous foreign policy. So I believe that I think that we need to develop more capacity building in the area of maritime affairs, so that we can see things in a more correct manner and make pronouncement that is legally sound and defensible.
Yes.
So that's what I would say with respect to that we need. But I don't think that they are advisors. Tony, in 2006, Barbados, that's so much disadvantage to us when that boundary was established, that up to today, the national community does not understand how we were disadvantaged by that line and made into be what you call a zone-locked state. We have no high seas in our jurisdiction. We have none. All we have is EZ.
So Stephen, I want to thank you very much for being with us and sharing that information. And I am going to be at your doorstep again for sure. As this matter develops,
and for having me. Thank you so much, and I wish you well in the rest of the interview with our brother from Guyana.
Yes, Bert Wilkinson. Do you know of him?
I'm not quite. The name is familiar, but I'm not 100% sure.
One of Guyana's most
I know of
important journalists, man, and he's a journalist of
Yeah.
Guyana to the rest of the world through an international agency.
Yeah, well, you know, Guyanese have an
Sometimes.
international reputation for being
Okay.
very articulate people, especially in the region of foreign affairs. Who is the
Okay.
foreign affairs manager? He's a Guyanese.
Yeah. All right. So, Stephen, thank you very much
Right,
for
thank you,
being
Tony.
with us.
Thank you so much, brother.
And I'll be in touch. Shallow, let's take a short break. I see Bert Wilkinson, my colleague there, waiting. We're going to come to you in a moment, Bert, but let's take a commercial break for the moment. And when we come back, we talk about the results of the election in Guyana. For listeners, viewers would know. So the election was a week or so ago, and the results came out, I think, Thursday or Friday last week. And there are some interesting elements of the results that we're going to have Bert talk about. So, Chalo, take it, and we're going to come back in a moment.
Youth of the nation, listen well.
Wake up with the Net Radio Breakfast Show. Rise and shine with Wendell Stevens and Richard Raghubarsi, weekdays from 6 o'clock to 9 a.m. Start your day feeling good, energized, and informed as we tackle the biggest issues of the day, get you where you need to be on time, and keep you in the know about everything that matters. We bring you insightful discussions, expert analysis, and the latest updates so you're always ahead of the curve. Mornings matter. Your voice matters. And it all starts right here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio. The Net Radio Breakfast Show, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Wake up informed and stay ahead.
Join me, Brother David Muhammad, every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio, Powerful Radio. Join me to hear knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Tuesdays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Advertise with us on New Era TT Radio, the fastest growing streaming platform for talk in Trinidad and Tobago. Audio and video ads welcome. Elevate your brand with us. Connect with us at newerattradio@yahoo.com or call us at 299-5156. Now, what are you waiting for?
Bringing you full discussions, the hottest topics, and some chats to keep you moving. The DriveTime Exchange on Net Radio, taking you above and beyond.
All right, everybody. So we are back. We are here inside of the DriveTime Exchange. And of course, you're listening to New Era TT Radio. Remember, you can get us all day, every day at newerattradio.com. New Era TT Radio, for those of you who are using Alexa, and of course, all of your Google devices, you can get us there. So we jump back inside of the DriveTime Exchange. Tony Fraser?
Thank you very much, Sir Charles. And as indicated, we have with us senior journalist, Guyanese and Guyana journalist, Bert Wilkinson, a man who has been with an international agency, the Associated Press, for a few decades now, and a seasoned commentator and so on Guyana affairs. And Bert, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon to give our listeners and viewers some kind of deep indication as to, first of all, it is very unlike the past when you had two major political parties on their own, the traditional PNC and PPP. Now there have been some amalgamations, something like in Trinidad and Tobago, where parties have come together and attempting to win office. So give us But give us an indication of the parties, the significant ones. Of course, you will always have one-man parties like in Trinidad and everywhere else and so on. But the 3 or 4 major parties and how they lined up before the election.
All right. Good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me? You hearing me, Tony?
Yeah, loud and clear. Now, I think we have to adjust your picture a little bit. We are just seeing the top of your head. So if you go up some more, keep going up. All right. You're wonderful there. Shift to your left a little bit more.
All right. You got it?
No, you're still off center.
Yeah, go to your right then. Yeah.
Go to your right. You went too far to the left. Right. So if
Is
you
that,
stay
is
right
that okay?
there, that's wonderful.
All right. All right. July 14th was nomination days when parties had to hand in the list of candidates, and then we had six parties, and in the end, 6 competed. Basically, the PPP, which is the governing and re-elected party, the APNU, which had run the country between 2015 and 2020, and the newcomer, WIN, We Invest in Nationhood, a new political party formed on May 26th and picking up 16 seats when the results were declared at midnight on Saturday. Tony, someone like you and and other experts might want to hark back. They may want to think that we don't know of any other third party which broke the 2-party system in the Caribbean, picking up 16 seats at first try. I can't recall. I was trying to. I didn't get a chance to research the NIR that you had in 2 or 3 decades ago. But this win, led by Azuddin Mohammed, a businessman who was sanctioned by the U.S. He and his father for smuggling 10,000 kilos of gold to the U.S. and avoiding 50 million U.S. in taxes. They picked up more than 100,000 votes. So his predicament with the U.S. and possible impending charges, domestically and internationally, those were of no consequence. So a lot of first-time voters, a lot of young people, and a lot of those who were disgruntled both to the PPP and the APNU. So for the first time in its history, the APNU, which is led by the PNC, will be in parliament, but it will neither be government nor the main opposition. A new opposition leader is about to be sworn in, and this is led by a U.S. sanctioned man, Azuddin Mohammed, just 38 years of age.
And just to give our listeners a perspective on this thing, it is the party of Forbes Burnham of the 1960s.
The PNC and the APNU, yes. The party of Forbes Burnham, founded in 1957.
Right. And of course, Desmond Hoyt came in charge of the party after the passing of Forbes Burnham.
Born in 85, yes.
Yeah.
So for the first time in its history, it's neither fish nor fowl in Parliament.
Right. So what are the major parties we have in the Parliament at this point in time now, after the election?
We have 4. The PPP, WIN, We Invest in Nationhood, APNU, the APNU coalition, and a small one, Forward Guyana movement, which picked up 1 seat. So that's the composition of the 65 seats in Parliament.
But what of the party of Walter Rodney and what's his name, Hussey Guyana, which existed for some time?
The party of Rodney and Guyana and Roopnarain, they are part of the APNU coalition, which picked up 12 seats. So they may be given one of the 12 as the so-called major coalition partner, but it's basically a party of a few hundred people now. It's the shadow of itself from the 80s when it was on the verge of possibly getting rid of Mr. Burnham.
Yeah. And some interesting things happened at that point in time, which is we're not going to go into that point of what transpired there. So in terms of the seats division, and you can also inform our listeners, it's a system that is different from Trinidad and Tobago, and in terms of how do you go to the poll, etc., etc.
Well, this is about proportional representation and a bit of hybridness of constituency in the interior regions, but it's basically first past the post here. I could become president by beating you by one single vote. The composition right now, as it stands, PPP has a simple, easy majority: 36 of the 65, win 16, APNU 12, and FGM Forward Guyana Movement 1. So I don't think none of the, even the opposition parties combined, none can stop the PPP from passing legislation that requires an ordinary simple majority. None can stop it.
Right. And the PP has some coalition elements to it at some point in time. Does that still exist?
Not really. In the 90s, they had something called the PPP Civic, which they basically invited civil society people to come aboard. You don't have to be a party member. Come aboard and be a part of it. So they just call themselves now PPPC. The word civic has disappeared. In fact, it's not there at all. But the legal definition of the PPP is PPPC.
Right. Is that a display of greater confidence in the core of the PPP? The PPP, of course, is a party that was, created, founded, if you like, by Chedi Jagan, a former president of the country, and so on. Is this shedding of coalition ties, as it were, a sense of great confidence in itself?
Well, over the when they went to that concept and they added that concept in '92, it was to put a better face, to bring in civic elements and professional elements. Remember, at that time, it had a communist brand and communist perception attached to it. So that was part of the of easing it. But over the years, many of the civic members became full active card-bearing members of the PPP, so its relevance has disappeared. So basically, all we have now is the PPPC. But the important thing from this elections here in a country where Guyana now is very geopolitically important because of its oil, because it's closest to Venezuela, because of the country with Venezuela, is that basically none of the opposition parties was able to present itself or themselves as a credible alternative government. So I don't think the West took any of them seriously. I don't think oil and gas took any of them seriously. I don't think the private sector and civil society took any of the opposition parties seriously. None presented itself as an alternative government, and none had the funding, the cash. None was as cash flush as the PPP. Just before prorogation, about 2 or 3 months ago, the PPP had taken $56 billion ostensibly for development purposes, and everyone thinks that was used to fund the campaign. The PPP was cash flush, and it was a vast difference with all the other parties, especially the APNU. When we invest in nationhood was self-funded by the Mohammed family, the family of Azruddin Mohammed. It's an amazing thing to see them funding themselves, chartering boats and going to every corner of the country with their own money. The APNU had none.
Yeah. But what does that hold for politics in Guyana? This new party and this new style, as you indicated, with a billionaire man sharing dollars and cents around. Well, I know about cents.
And building houses for people, donating houses and cars for people. This the main focus of discussion now is how long it's going to last. What is the adhesive? What is going to keep it together? And to what extent it will not coalesce, but to what extent it will work with the PPP? Don't forget, Azruddin Mohammed and his family were fundamental PPP members.
Okay.
They fell out in the last few years, especially after the U.S. sanctioned him. And the government appeared to support the sanction. They didn't bat for him. So, he was quite aggrieved. They shut all his businesses down after he got sanctioned. They disarmed his security for his big, massive gold mining and gold trading, gold exporting companies, and fortunately rendered him economically useless. So Barra Jagdeo and Orphan Ali will continue to say during the campaign that Azuddin Mohammed is trying to get back at us because he's disaffected and he's disgruntled that we supported the US in sanctioning him, and he's just making sure that he wouldn't be extradited. He's just trying to save his ASS. So to what extent we as the months go by, we're going to see if he's going to try to patch up or if he's going to hold the line as he's promised, hold the government accountable and reduce the amazing level of corruption that we have in Guyana.
Yeah. But what is likely to happen from Washington? Are they going to live with him as somebody they claim to be, a criminal and need to face criminal charges, or are they going to leave him in the context of wanting an opposition to have the government going and stabilized?
The U.S. ambassador was asked during the counting. That's after Monday, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday last week, and she said there are ways around it. They've been forced to work with people around the world. She mentioned Afghanistan, people who have been sanctioned in the U.S. or wanted by the U.S. She said there are ways around it, and they have to watch and see what committees, parliamentary committees, is going to go on. You will have to just avoid working with that committee. But basically, she was signaling that nothing can be done. Don't forget, in our own CARICOM region in Suriname, Desi Bouterse was elected president 2 times, wanted by the Dutch. The last vice president was Ronnie Brunswick in the last coalition led by Santoki. And they lived with him for 5 years, and now he's deputy speaker of the Surinamese parliament, and nobody's moving against him. Both the Dutch and the French have extradition requests for Brunswick.
All right. So we are talking with journalist Bert Wilkinson of Guyana, and he's giving us really the details of what transpired in the election. But are we likely to see the old PNC disappear completely from the scene?
Not really. The challenge is to rebuild, and I can tell you from big social session we had over the weekend. They're going to try and push R.B. Norton, the leader out. The man who dared to think that he could have persuaded, as you have in Trinidad, the 10% swing voters. They're going to try and push him out at some stage, and try and find a consensus leader, somebody who could appeal nationally. Norton had no relations with the private sector. Norton had no relations with civil society. Norton had no fraternal relations with political parties in the Caribbean. For example, PMP in Jamaica, the Dems, PNM. So it is amazing that he thought that he could run as a national leader. He had no relations with oil and gas. And Guyana, as you know, is on the cusp of being a petro state. So if you're going to campaign like he did and say, here, as soon as I get in there, we're going to tear down the current production sharing agreement and other agreements with Exxon, while the people with PP were saying, hey, we're not touching it. So we're going to obey the sanctity of an agreement, and any new companies coming will abide by the new fiscal regime that we have in place. But Exxon will enjoy the old one. Norton took the opposite.
Yeah.
Which was stupid.
Setting himself up for failure.
Yeah, that was stupid, very stupid.
Yeah. But there is, and I spoke to our colleague in Jamaica, Milton Walker, earlier today. It seems as if some of the significant figures, those politicians post-election, post-independence, the likes of Chedi Jagan and the Manleys, Bustamante, all of them have moved. Eric Williams, they have moved off the scene, and those persons that you talk about in the PNC, they simply don't have the kind of appeal. They don't have the capacity of their seniors. Is that something that is affecting the PNC?
That is absolutely true. at some stage you seem to think that, except for Norton, most of those in the PNC don't seem to understand this is Burnham's party. And Burnham, as you know, was Mr. Charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Norton himself has no charisma. He's always scowling. I know sometimes he socializes with us, and we tell him, you got to smile a little more. You got to be more charismatic. You got to reach out to people. But yes, indeed, you get the impression like the West Indies team when you compare from Worrell and Lloyd. You come down now, you have a whole bunch of slashers who don't even seem to pay respect to what has happened before. They just existing on their own, doing their own thing.
Yeah. So that surely the PNC is going to suffer from that. I don't know if there are other persons on the horizon who could take over and make a difference in terms of leadership. Is there
That's a very good point. That's very saying. I was at a social event on Friday. It was the Umanabi holiday, Islamic holiday, and the guys were saying, "Hey, we got to take this party by the scruff of the neck. Find an acceptable leader who could appeal nationally, who could mend fence with oil and gas, who could be respected by the international community, who could be respected and would reach out to the private sector." So going forward, the party rebuilding process is to look for somebody who could put together a coalition, because Guyana knows, to a lesser extent than Suriname, Guyana is a country of coalition politics. No one single party can run the show by itself. If you read most of the books produced in Guyana in the 60s and 70s, it said that the Indian population was 51%. Now it's down to 37%. The Afro population is like 32, 34, and mixed 20 to 25. So you have to, there's that element that you have to capture. Then you have to have some a decent amount of votes from the 10% indigenous population in Guyana. So whatever the PNC does, they have to get somebody who could appeal to all those segments, including civil society, including the Muslim community in Guyana, Hindu community.
Yeah, very much. Is there a 1% Trinidad style there? Perhaps in the business community?
It's more like 8-10. It's more like 8-10 that we call the so-called swing voters, and people who disgruntled with the level of corruption in the PPP and actually want to see change. But again, no opposition party appealed to them. They probably were either forced to not vote or to stay with the PPP.
What of the old Diga, voting capacity, the old Portuguese class and so on?
They're scattered a bit, a lot of them in the private sector now, and with opportunities now from oil and gas to revenues, the revenues getting like $9 million US dollars a day from oil. A lot of them have fallen in line or just remaining quiet and not offending. Because don't forget, a lot of contracts are being given out for shore-based activities, for infrastructure development, and which is absolutely crazy here. So a lot have gone quiet. A lot have fallen in line. A lot have stayed. I've made sure they haven't offended the government.
Right. All right. So we're going to go to the ruling party and look ahead as to what this victory means and how President Irfan Ali is going to manage the victories that the party has got. An overwhelming victory. As you indicated, but not even if the opposition parties come together, as they can threaten his parliamentary hold on the government. So let's take a quick break and then we come back. We're talking Guyana. We're talking about the future now. We've talked about the opposition parties and how they're likely to, fashion themselves and refashion themselves. And we're going to come to how President Ali is going to manage the ship ahead of the People's Progressive Party, the party of Chedi Jagan. Chedi and Janet Jagan, I should add.
Your mid-morning just got better. Join Sir Charles for the mid-morning mix and mingle, where good music, real talk, health, and family matters come together, and your voice is heard. Whether you're at work, on the go, or just taking a break, this is the perfect mix to keep you engaged, informed, and entertained. The mid-morning mix and mingle, weekdays, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Chamflair Auto Services Limited, your one-stop auto repair shop, located at number 1 Industrial Lane, Chamflair, right opposite the brewery on the Eastern Main Road. Yes, we do it all. Repairs to all makes and models, from your everyday sedan to SUVs, light trucks, pickups, and panel vans. We're also the sole distributors of Davanti tires, certified VTS inspection station, plus a wide range of services: oil change, front end and suspension repairs, tune-ups, tire alignment, batteries, electrical work, radiator and cooling system, AC repairs, and accessories galore. We offer pickup and drop-off service too. Call us today at 662-6545 or 662-6572. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Chamflair Auto Services Limited, number 1 Industrial Lane, Chamflair. We do it all.
S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
We are the heartbeat of the Caribbean, where the music never stops. New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
For every man's need, but not enough for every man's dream. Remember that life has
So people, we welcome you back to the DriveTime Exchange. Of course, we're inside the home stretch right about now with journalist Tony Fraser. And it's good to have you here on. Remember, you're listening on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio, and we are happy to have you. So, Tony, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Charlo. And, during the break, as we indicated, we have Bert Wilkinson, senior journalist of Guyana, in Guyana, works for the Associated Press and all the other agencies in Guyana. Bert, during the break, it just came to my mind to fill out the picture a little bit for our listeners and viewers. We have to talk for a minute or two about the past of Guyana in the Jagan Burnham era, the intervention of the United States and Britain in the affairs of the country, and those things have a kind of possibility of recurring if it is of some significance. And of course, we have the Venezuela situation right next door on that. So tell our listeners or viewers something about that. Is there possibilities that that kind of thing can happen again? Sorry, but you're muted. Go ahead now. Right.
You got it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's here in a different way, in that the U.S. is running the show as to which government runs this country, and you kind of can't blame them because, again, it is the considered opinion of many that none of the opposition parties, including the APNU, really and truly presented the face of an alternative government at a time when Guyana is becoming more and more an important player in oil and gas internationally. They're soon going to be producing 1 million barrels a day, and Exxon is setting itself up for to remain in Guyana for a lifetime, having found so much oil in Guyana. We also geopolitically important because of Venezuela. And as you know, Guyana, along with Trinidad, Guyana came out before Trinidad to support the U.S. action against Venezuela. But back to the question you asked, in the 1950s, when we had internal self-government in 53, Cherry Jagan was crazy enough to declare that he wanted to be Ghana to be a communist, leftist, socialist country. And the US and the British intervened and pushed his government out. There's no need to do that now, most of us think. But how they're doing it is to control the situation, is to pick the people in charge and to encourage them and to take those who present themselves as a stable government, which the PPP has done, seriously. As well as, again, we talked earlier, when the PPP was in opposition in 2015, 2020, they did go to Washington and they did indicate, they did give assurances, look, we're not going to upset the oil and gas apple cart. We are not going to renegotiate this lopsided contract. It's a hugely lopsided contract Guyana has. We're not going to renegotiate it. And the stupid opposition says, hey, along with your friends in the environment and human rights, said as soon as we get in, as soon as we get a chance, we're going to tear it up. So, like Dale Carnegie said, they didn't win friends or influence anybody by doing that.
But there's some deep politics there to be resolved. But let's go to what lies ahead. The PPP has got back into office. It has resources, abundant resources, and how is it going to manage those resources and develop the country? One of the concerns I always have is that Trinidad and Tobago is a very bad example to follow in terms of dealing with the oil breaders that came to us, and we flitted it away. And sometimes when I hear about the business communities, not the productive elements of the business communities, but those who shop abroad and sell and so on, I get very worried. So what is the PPP plan going forward?
Rex Tillerson, when he was head of Exxon, I think he later became Secretary of State or something like that in the US. He came and he asked David Granger, what are you going to do with all this money when oil starts to flow? Well, there are 4 oil fields now, and Guyana is getting nearly $9 million a day. There are 4 more in the pipeline that's going to be approved in the next year. By then, Guyana is going to be producing maybe 1.3, 1.5 million barrels a day. You will realize that the revenues coming in would be like 12 to 15 billion a year. The focus of the government right now is infrastructure development. They're rushing to build bridges across rivers, to build roads, to improve infrastructure in communities. And right now, there's a massive labor shortage in Guyana. We have close to 100,000 Venezuelans. And everywhere, every single place you go, you see either Cubans or Venezuelans working. 20, 30 of them, because the Guyanese are not working. But you talk about frittering away the wealth and the opportunities you had in the 70s and 60s with oil. We have learned a bit from you by taking a lot of your oil expertise and having them work in Guyana. There are thousands of Trinidadians in Guyana working with them. They brought their oil expertise. And when you ask them, hey, when you going back, they say, going back where? This is home. This is home. And socially, they say, hey, don't want to shooting at us here, so we're going to be here for a while.
What about Guyanese returning home? There was a scattering of the population, back in the 60s, 70s. Are they returning in bulk?
There was a massive scattering of the population up to like the mid 2000s, like 2000 up to like 2008 when we had the jailbreak and all those guys running around the place with guns. But a lot of professionals are coming back. A lot of retirees are coming back, and even those who are not coming back are coming back and fixing up their homes and renting it out, opening a business and going back. And it's a lot of them are going back and forth. You see, with the large expatriate community, there is still a shortage, despite massive amount of housing starts. There's still a shortage of homes and office space and warehouses and other facilities. So a lot of people in the US and Canada, they're coming back and getting them, as they say, put back their 1 foot. They're getting back the Guyana passport, getting a Guyana driver license, getting back a new birth certificate, and they're bringing their children. and making sure their children get a Guyana passport, just in case with our boy Mr. Trump and his new policies, new MAGA policies in the U.S. A lot of people that's another driving factor. MAGAism in the U.S.
Yeah. So, do you get the sense, and has the government, or both the past government and the present government, same party, indicated a developmental program for the country outside of simply spending money?
Yes. They've talked about trying to heal the racial divide, but Guyana right now, I don't think the racial issue is the number one. Corruption and injustice are the two main things. So, new main issue. So, if you talk to Orphan Alley and the PPP, they will tell you, look, this election shows that we are on the cusp of breaking the back of racial politics. But going forward, apart from infrastructural development, they're talking about sharing some of the patrimony with the CARICOM neighbors in terms of food security and providing opportunities for mega farms and all that in the next few months. But the specter of corruption and impunity now they've won. People fear impunity and callous disregard for rules and laws going forward, because you can't do anything about them in Parliament. They get to appoint the police commissioner, get to appoint the army chief, and there's a level of vindictiveness that has characterized Guyana's politics whenever the PPP is in power, and they have private militiamen that they could turn to. These are issues that we have to worry going forward.
And I mean, that's a fearful kind of disease within the politics, which of course Guyana is not the only country in the region that suffers from that disease. It's all over the place. It's rife in Trinidad and Tobago. Is the president, well, he must be aware of it. Is there any policy or any indication from him and the government to move in the direction of trying to heal this disease?
The first disease he's trying to heal through a concept called One Guyana is a race problem.
Yeah.
He repeatedly says it, scripted or unscripted, that no one will be left behind and he's president for everyone. You talk to the opposition, the rights groups, and other civil society, they will point you to what happens at the tender board, at the procurement system. 99% of all contracts and opportunities are given to PPP friends and family.
Yeah.
There is massive nepotism in this country. It's a source of serious concern. And again, when you put that together with the feeling of political impunity and judicial impunity in Guyana, when you put that together, it's a source of concern going forward.
Right. And just to elaborate, Bert, so that our listeners, our viewers understand what you are saying, we are talking about, and of course, we know it very well in Trinidad and Tobago, between the Indo and Afro Trinidadian community. What Bert is talking about is about Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese, and those who are in power sharing in the spoils, and those who are out of power sharing in the promises. Do I get you correctly there, Bert?
Yes, I've seen, for example, let me give an example that supports this. There are a few performing artists who said here, because I spoke out on social media, not necessarily in favor of the government, I get absolutely no work from the government. I'm shut out from everything. And that is across the board in other areas. Suriname, one of the ills of the government in Suriname, what had to do with, again, the friends and nepotism and the feeling that only friends and family got opportunities, got contracts, got trips overseas. That happens here to a large extent. And it continues to be a source of concern, and we don't think anything's going to change. Things are going to worsen.
Yeah. What about somebody like yourself, Bert? Somebody who is not dependent on the government and is free to say what you think is needed to be said, as you've been saying over the last hour in the program. Is there any attempt to get at you?
Not Not really, but I wish you had put your hand on a statement that the Press Association put out today, expressing concern about a tendency of government to be quite hostile to journalists asking pointed questions, especially if, let's say you encounter the president or some of the ministers and they do a stand-up, as we call it. The Press Association said it's getting quite concerned about the tone. And then the president promised that, here, look, going forward, in this new term, people who speak out against us on social media and speak lies, of course, they're the ones who determine what a lie is. That we're going to go after them. They've made that plain. But they only go after people who are regarded as anti-government. Their social media people could say anything. There's one called Guyanese Critic. I don't know if you've ever seen him. Yesterday or Saturday on Facebook, he did a Google Earth of the home of Azharuddin Mohammed and saying, hey, United States, this is the home you have to bomb. Now, if I say so, I'd be charged with cybercrime.
Yeah.
He pulled up, he said, look, the swimming pool there, don't avoid the swimming pool, hit the house.
Wow.
Well, now if I say so, and I'm not regarded as a pro-government or anything, I'm sure I'll be in jail, charged with cybercrime. Bullyism, terrorism, domestic terrorism. But those who support the government have impunity.
At the ordinary level, and by ordinary I mean people, not concerned about politics, but not deeply involved in any political party and so on. How is life for them?
Cost of living is a key issue. The government has said it will address this in the coming months by making more oil revenues available. I'm 67, so I get $200 a month US, the equivalent, for just being over 65. They said basically they're going to double that in going forward. There's something called public assistance for the indigent. They get just under 200. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
They get like 100 and something US for just being indigent. So a lot of the welfare programs, like so-called cash grant, everybody in the country who had an ID card got 500 US for most of this year, a cash grant. Government, those who wrote CXC and paid for CXC, the government is going to refund them the money. Right now, the University of Guyana is free again, as was the case in Burnham's time. So there are a lot of welfare issues that the government says it's going to try to address. It's going to try to deal with to make life easy, but cost of living is a little tough now. And most importantly, salaries for state workers remain quite low.
Okay, all right. So it's a difficult situation. I heard something caught my attention. President Ali was on the cricket commentary last night, the T20 CPL,
yes.
And he talked about being a cricket fan, of course, myself. He caught my attention talking about, building the kind of academy that is required to resurface West Indies cricket. Is that serious talk, or are you saying that for the purposes?
If it's cricket, it is serious talk. But to what you know what's going to happen? Barbados is going to fight for it. Antigua is going to say bring it. Trinidad is going to say it. So it's going to end up being a domestic thing. But yes, don't underrate the resources that they have. They could do anything. But I don't think Guyana, being so far south, will get will be the place for an academy. I think it's going to happen in Barbados or Antigua. But we've had several attempts at academy and high performance. We had one in Grenada. It just faded away. I don't know. I don't take that seriously anymore because I don't know. And with all the recommendations we had, including the one with Clive Lord the other day, that was one of the major recommendations. But Ali has the resources and to do it, and he has the love for the game to do it.
Yeah. One final comment from you, Bert, and I have a little message to give to you after that. But your closing sort of wrap-up comment on the situation.
I wish the opposition had done better. I wish we had a minority government to keep the government in check.
Yeah.
We already seeing elements of arrogance, political arrogance, stepping in, as we saw for most of the year. Really and truly, as an individual, I'm really and truly worried about political impunity and protection for people pro-government, people who do wrong things. They are not charged. Nothing happens to them in Guyana. So I do admire the Trinidad police. I do admire the Jamaican police who would arrest almost anyone. It does not happen here. I'm really and truly worried about that. Really and truly worried about political cronies being appointed to the tender board and the procurement commission. They shut people out who are, in fact, look, I have many Afro contractors who do not even worry, who do not even think of applying for a contract. Because it costs you money to tender. And you could tender 20, 30 times in a year, and it costs you 50,000 US, and you still don't get a single contract.
But we have to talk more within the CARICOM area about how our countries are going separately because we're in a difficult situation. But let me close by giving you a message that I got from some of your colleagues and my colleagues. When I told them I'm going to talk to you this afternoon, it might make you chuckle a little bit. One is from St. Lucia, and one is a Trinidadian who claims St. Lucian roots. And they both told me...
Peter Richards, right?
And they told me that you're going to be the Minister of Information in the government to come. And I should ask you that question.
No. I have, as we're saying, and I've got good cards by staying away from the politics.
But that's your friends, right? So they can say what they want.
Those are my regional buddies, man.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bert Wilkinson, for chatting with us.
Thank you again.
Take care, my friend, and all the best.
Okay, man. Okay, bye.
Okay, Chalo, we are back on the air. And just to indicate that this program is going to be repeated tomorrow, you will tell us what kind of time we're talking about. And so over to you, Sir Charles.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and thank you very much for your two guests passing through, despite the technical issues that we had earlier on. This program will be repeated tomorrow morning, just at around 20 past, 25 past, in that area there, past the hour of 8 o'clock. You can tune in to New Era TTRadio.com so that you can hear all that we are doing. And if you want also, you can just go up to our YouTube channel. It will be available to you probably within the next 10 minutes once YouTube finalizes it. And you can play back this interview from today already. It will be documented and be waiting there for you.
And we had two really solid interviews this afternoon. Details about the issues that we dealt with.
Very, very much so.
Okay, my friend, tomorrow we talk.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tony. Of course, people, this has been the DriveTime Exchange right here on New Era TT Radio.